Kaidon Salter just proved Deion Sanders and all of his doubters wrong in Colorado's win over Wyoming.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. We're also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage because we have a lot of fun things coming up. Former Buff Jordan Dominic always joins the show every week. We do film breakdown as well if you want to become a Locked On Buffs insider. So thank you for making me your first listen. Let's dive right in. Kaidon Salter gets benched a couple weeks ago, or last week, I guess. And even the week before really gets benched. And this week, Deion Sanders finally gives him another opportunity to prove if he could be the starter. He takes advantage. Colorado had multiple players step up across the offense and defense. And then the Buffs have a very challenging game next week. And so this win came at the perfect time. So let's just dive into it. Right, I think this is a redemption game for both Kaidon Salter and the team as a whole. Right, Kaidon Salter went from the Georgia Tech game he played. This is the story arc of Kaidon Salter, one of the best dual threats in the country. Colorado lands him. Colorado plays him against Georgia Tech. Colorado sort of doesn't get the best out of him, but he had 102-degree fever, and it's like, okay, we didn't really see the best Kaidon Salter, but surely against Delaware he'll put it together. Well, Deion Sanders decides to experiment. Benches Kaidon Salter or decides to rotate quarterbacks, and Ryan Staub takes over, right? So Ryan Staub starts against Houston, and Kaidon Salter is sort of just like left on the bench. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we thought he was going to be this Heisman caliber quarterback, and now he's holding a clipboard, right? So Kaidon Salter shows like, hey, I'm that guy that you paid for to bring in, right? I'm the guy that had all the schools in the country coming after him. I'm that guy. And he proved that tonight, right? Stat line of 18 for 28 passing, which is completed 64% of his passes, 304 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns. And then he also led the team in rushing with 86 yards and a touchdown with a long of 35. He was just simply, I think he was more decisive. I think on one of the touchdown passes to Sincere Brown, he and Sincere like kind of connected. They had that. It was on a scramble drill. So Kaidon's scrambling out of the pocket and he's like pointing. He's like, go upfield, and delivers a perfect pass. And I think he just looked more confident, more decisive. And I think that's what Deion Sanders has been asking of him this entire season. Now, do I think Deion Sanders kind of gave up on Kaidon Salter way too early? I do, right? I do think that the Houston or the Delaware quarterback experiment wasn't necessary. I understood why he went with Ryan Staub. I supported him going with Ryan Staub because when you go with a weird system where you play 3 quarterbacks and you're like, we're going to play the best one. Well, it's like Ryan Staub played the best that day. Granted, Kaidon Salter got 2 drives at the beginning and then didn't play for the next 2 hours. So I think Deion Sanders was wrong about Kaidon Salter. I think he needed to give him a little more leeway, a little more like, hey, you're learning a new system. You're playing with a whole new team, and we know what you could do. I just don't think Deion Sanders was patient enough with Kaidon Salter. So redemption game for him. Redemption game for Colorado as a whole, because obviously you get out physicaled, you get pushed around by Houston. Now, Wyoming still ran the ball effectively. I'll be honest. Their running back, Samuel Harris. I think we're calling him Tote Harris, if I'm not mistaken. 19 carries for 126 yards. That kid's good. I'll be honest. I think he's going to have a lot of programs knocking on his door, offering him a couple bags when the transfer portal opens this offseason. But for the most part, Colorado controlled the game, right? They went into the half up. They were up 21-3. They go up 28-3 in the third quarter. Wyoming answers with a touchdown and a field goal, and then Colorado gets a safety after a brutal fumble by Michael Welch, where he was probably about 3 yards away from scoring, and then gets stripped from behind. But Arden Walker gets the sack and the safety. Wyoming scored a touchdown with 4 minutes remaining, and the last few minutes, that was not a redemption for Colorado in terms of game management. I think both them and Wyoming were just, I don't know what they were doing, right? Colorado could have ran the clock out, but they were throwing the ball and then Wyoming wasn't using any timeouts. It was like a weird display of like how to not manage game properly. But hey, it worked out for Colorado in the end. Kaidon Salter iced the game with a 35-yard touchdown to win 37-20. This is a redemption game for a lot of people, though. Kaidon Salter, I think redemption game for him. I think Michael Welch, for the most part, had a redemption game minus the fumble. That was a tough beat because it was a 44-yard run, and then it's not going to be remembered because he obviously loses the ball. Omarion Miller, redemption game for him. I would say he had a pretty big outing, 6 catches for 188 yards and a touchdown. Sincere Brown had the 1 catch for 68 yards and a touchdown, so not too bad there. Arden Walker, welcome to the season. Arden Walker coming into today had 0 sacks. He finished today with 1.5 sacks and the safety being one of them. Big game from him. Big bounce back from him. Tafiq Byard, I liked what I saw from him. He didn't really redeem himself because he's been balling out, but I really liked what I saw from him. And then not Carter Stottmeyer, excuse me. Makari Vickers, excuse me. His name was slipping in my mind. Makari Vickers had a pretty decent game. 1 pass deflection, was making plays left and right, got the start aside from McKinney. And I think Quentin Gibson is on kick returns. I think he's a week away or so from returning one for a touchdown. It's getting closer and closer. And I really think he's gonna bust one eventually. But overall, I would say the biggest storyline is Kaidon Salter. When you go from being benched and pretty much everyone in the fan base turns on you to being like, hey, I'm that guy, right? You guys paid me to come here for a reason. And I think he showed that. So huge game from him. I think he gives Colorado the identity that they were missing, right? I don't really know if this is the offense. Like the run game wasn't outside of Salter wasn't, I don't think it's where Colorado wants it to be, but it was more serviceable, right? They ran for almost 200 yards as a team. But I think Kaidon Salter in at quarterback sort of gives Colorado the identity that they've been missing. And I think they should have stuck with him a little longer in the weeks prior. But hey, what's done is done. When we come back, we're going to talk about the stars of the game because Colorado has a few guys step up and they all deserve some shine. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. This episode is brought to you by our sponsors over at the Game Cap. Now, let me tell you about the Game Cap, because if you like a good ball cap, this is the place to go. Quick question for all you college football fans. If you could go back in time and sit for a row at your school's biggest rivalry, what hat would you be wearing? Yeah, I said hat. For me, it'd be the game, right? These aren't just hats. They're the same vintage styles that fans wore back in the 80s and 90s. That's when style was at its peak. And guess what? They still go for the very same price they did back then. When you go use code Locked On, it'll get you a vintage hat for $16.99. Head to thegamecaps.com, grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design, and use code Locked On for an exclusive discount, because legends wear the game. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. Become a Locked On Buffs insider. We have a subtext, myself and former Colorado player Jordan Dominic, where we do film breakdowns. So on Tuesday, we will be recording a film breakdown of this Colorado-Wyoming game. We'll post it. Jordan will provide his expertise, his insight, and you guys will be able to hear from a professional player, a guy who played at Colorado. Let's talk about the stars of the game. I mean, Kaidon Salter, easy star of the game. Right, you combine for over 400 yards of total offense. You're doing something right, and I think I don't want to say Kaidon Salter is the identity, but I think Kaidon Salter helps form the identity, and he has the dual threat ability. He can make the throws. I think a lot of people were really doubting his accuracy, and he can make the throws. And I think that was a big concern for some reason, because we saw him play one full game with 102-degree fever, and we're like, okay, it's time to bench the guy. So I don't think that was the right move, but Salter was just simply a star at quarterback. And I think Deion Sanders, and this goes for most teams, but I think he needs a star quarterback, right? I think his teams are better. Like Shedeur Sanders was a superstar, and Colorado they played well, right? They relied on a quarterback. They needed someone that they could count on. And I think Kaidon Salter is that guy. I want to go with my next star here. Omarion Miller is I mean, Omarion Miller was a star, but Sincere Brown is a big play waiting to happen every game. So in the last 3 games, because he didn't really play or he didn't record a catch in the first game, he has a long of 68 and 71. And against Delaware, he had a 71-yard, I think a 50-ish. Excuse me. Those late night games, they get you a 50-ish yard run, right? So, or a 50-yard reception. Like, he's averaging 22.5 yards per catch at the moment, or he was before today's game. So it's going to go up even more. But he's a playmaker, dude. You get the ball to him in open space. And I talked with our transfer portal insider, Brian Smith, when Colorado landed him. And I was like, okay, what does this guy bring to the table? And he's like, he's huge, but he's so fast, right? He puts that foot in the ground and he hits another gear. And we've seen it 2 weeks in a row, or excuse me, I guess 2 times this month. We can't say 2 weeks in a row. 2 times this month, he makes huge plays where you just get him the ball in open space and no one's going to catch him. Another guy who I was really impressed with on offense, I guess and I don't think he really lit it up, and maybe a star isn't, I guess, what we should call him, but I think he had a great performance from what was asked of him, was Terrell Timmons. I think Terrell Timmons is oftentimes forgotten, and I think he had 2 really tough catches today. Went 2 for 30. I also like what I saw from Joseph Williams. Joseph Williams is kind of the deep ball threat, in my opinion, or the contested deep ball threat. He's the Will Shepherd, I think, of this year's team, in the sense of, like, throw it up to Joseph and he's going to go up and get it, right? And that was sort of the selling point with him, is like, he's a jump ball getter, and he came down with one in double coverage. It was a pretty good throw by Kaidon, right? But you throw it up to Joseph and you have a good feeling that he's gonna come down with it. Defensively, Tawfiq Bayard is legitimately probably the best player on defense for this Colorado team. He's just in the box all the time, making tackles, making the right plays, right? He had 6 total tackles, or a tackle for a loss. Another player that really impressed me, and I don't think he really registered a stat that I'm seeing, but or no, he did. He had a tackle for a loss, was London Merritt. He was forcing the quarterback. He's making the quarterback get uncomfortable, right? London Merritt and Alexander McPherson, 2 true freshmen who are quite simply going to be stars. And it's going to be hard for Colorado to keep them both, right? Because I do think programs are going to come knocking. I assume Coach Prime has a culture in place where these guys don't leave, but don't be surprised if it's whatever, February or December, and we hear like, oh yeah, these programs came knocking for them, because they're stars, right? They played really well. Another guy who I thought played well on defense, and I kind of mentioned him earlier, was Arden Walker. Arden Walker was supposed to be the guy, right? He was kind of like the second sack guy last year, where he would get the cleanup sacks, and it was just one of those things where I don't think he was like the dominant pass rusher. It was like, that was BJ Green. But I thought Arden Walker would be that this year, and he hadn't been yet. And big game from him. Huge game from Arden Walker. I liked what I saw. I liked what he did. And so big game from him. Now, some guys that weren't stars, some guys that struggled. I think DeKalen Taylor, I would have liked to see more, right? They gave him 9 carries, and he only got 22 yards. It's one of those things where it's like, I want him to be involved more, but obviously you got to make the most out of your opportunities. Preston Hodge, and I think when we go back and watch the film, we'll see he was covering pretty well, but he was called for 2 pass interference plays, he got called for pass interference twice on two different plays. And then he also, I think he got away with one in the end zone where it was probably pass interference. And so I expect a little bit better out of Preston Hodge. I think DJ McKinney gave up a couple of catches too. Not stars, the run defense, right? That is definitely Colorado's biggest weakness, is stopping the run. Wyoming, as a team, was 41 carries for 165 yards and 4.4 yards per carry. But Sam Harris was 19 for 126 and 6.6. So clearly Colorado's defense is showing like, hey, if you're more physical than us, you will have success running the ball, right? Colorado's struggled to stop the run all season. He rattled off a long of 50. And then getting off the field on 3rd down for Colorado has been an issue, right? And I think it's tough because Wyoming has the ultimate Wildcat quarterback, Evan Savoba. Oh, excuse me. Svoboda, I believe is how you say it. I can't say it. I know how to say it, but I can't say it, if you know what I mean. 6'5", 250, former quarterback who threw for 5 touchdowns last season and then rushed for another 5. Big dude. They just would put him out at Wildcat quarterback on 3rd and short, and he kept getting the first down. So some guys stood out, some other position groups or people stood out for the wrong reasons, but I think overall it was a good performance to hang your hat on. I think this is Colorado's best game of the season because even against Delaware, they may have scored more points and won by more. Colorado didn't look good, right? I think they tackled better today for the most part. And, I think they got a more complete performance, and that's what they've been missing. They've been missing the big plays. They've been missing the complete performances, and they got that tonight. So huge game for them. When we come back, we're going to talk about what's next for the Buffs. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready because you got to be ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. This episode of Locked on Buffs is also brought to you by our sponsors over at Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's a local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that that knows your order by heart, or the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives, right? There's a local little coffee shop in my neighborhood that I go there every day, or not every day, but I go there frequently, right? They have great breakfast, great drinks, and they know me. I know them. And it's just like perfect because it's that sense of community, and they use Square, right? And Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. What is next for the Buffs? Let's talk about that. First of all, another late game. So next week they're kicking off at 7:15 p.m. Pacific. I think that's 8:15 Mountain, and then that'll be 10:15 Eastern time for y'all on the East Coast. They're playing BYU. BYU is good. BYU is really good, actually. They handled East Carolina, which was their biggest test of the season tonight. Bear Bachmeier, 18 to 25 for 250 yards and a tud. LJ Martin rushed for 101 yards and 7.2 yards per carry. He had a touchdown. He's going to be a problem for Colorado if they can't figure out a way to stop him. They win 34-13, and that's the first time BYU's given up a touchdown. It's the first time they've given up more than 3 points. So obviously they haven't been tested as much. I think this will be it's going to be a challenge for Colorado, right? BYU could rush the passer with the best of them. On the year, they have 5 sacks, or they had 5 sacks coming into today. Let's see how many they added today against East Carolina, because they're a team that gets the quarterback, and you don't want your quarterback, aka Kaidon Salter, getting chased around. So they have 7 sacks on the year, and they've only played 3 games, and so I really expect this to be a physical game. The most physical team is going to win the game. That hasn't been Colorado of late, right? Colorado got boat raced by this BYU team in the Alamo Bowl. But I think, excuse me as I get the hiccups, if Colorado played like they did tonight and they managed the game a little bit better at the end, they could win. They could beat anybody on their schedule. If they allow teams to push them around, they're not going to win games. They'll probably go 4-8, 5-7. BYU is a very physical team. Colorado's going to need Jordan Seaton healthy. He went down with an ankle injury, didn't play, and I think it was because they had the game in control. Simeon Price also went down with, I believe it was a leg injury. And yeah, Colorado's getting a little banged up, it's part of the game, but they need all hands on deck. They need everyone on their A game. They need to be physical. They cannot get pushed around like they have been at times this season and at times last season when they lost games. I think BYU is going to be a really tough game for Colorado. And I think it's a good litmus test for Colorado, right? Because Georgia Tech is a really good team. They're the number 18 team in the country. And I think Colorado took them down to the wire and probably should have won that game. And I would say BYU is probably the best team they've played this season outside of Georgia Tech. So it'll be a good litmus test to see how they do. I'll be tuned in. I'll keep you guys covered. So make sure to like, subscribe, follow. I will see you guys on Monday. Hope all of you have a great and safe weekend. This has been Locked on Buffs.